I now limit myself to 5 minutes. I first want to thank Mr. Garamendi, Mr. Norcross for being here also, Chairman Whitman and Chairman Bergman. You see by the number of chairmen, subcommittee chairmen, and from each of these committees how important this topic is. And I think, but I want to start by a quote from my friend Chairman Whitman, who says, "Quantity is a quality all of itself." Now, you may have stole that, but I'm giving you credit. Administrator Carmel, how is the Maritime Administration currently implementing the Maritime Action Plan, and what changes are needed through the SHIPS Act to bring about growth in both commercial fleets and assured access stipend-supported fleets?
Thank you, sir. There are, of course, two prongs here. One is developing the legislative proposals that are required to implement the various portions of the map. We have done that, and hopefully we'll be sending those up to you in the near future. So we have that part, but we're not waiting for that. We have undertaken a bunch of things that we can do on our own. We don't need legislative action for. In workforce development, for instance, we are working with the unions on dealing with high school level kids. I was just up in Alaska and did a tour of a great training facility up there. They could use some help in terms of innovation. And implementing the map requires new ideas to begin with, so we are working diligently on new ideas that will hopefully give us advantage. As I mentioned in my statement, we're not going to out-China the Chinese, and so we need to reset the terms of competition. Things like ice-class cable layers, for instance, are something I'm paying particular attention to. I think the first transpolar route that will open is actually a subsurface one. Then we have new propulsion technologies. We are looking seriously at things like small nuclear reactors and changing the way we go about marine propulsion in a way that advantages the United States. Regulatory reform is a big one. We are looking internally at things we can do on our own to streamline the PIDP application process, the Title 11 process, to make it easier and more user-friendly. Those are both, right at the moment, extraordinarily onerous processes. We are meeting with representatives of the finance industry to look for new and innovative ways to provide for ship financing. So we are basically already stepping out on things that we can do without legislative intent, and you have a whole slug of proposals coming your way.
Thank you, Administrator. Mr. Potter, we often focus on building new ships, but getting ships through maintenance and back into service on time is just as critical to readiness, especially given today's maritime operational tempo. To what extent is repair capacity, dry dock, skilled labor, and yard availability a limiting factor today, and how can policies like those proposed in the SHIPS Act help expand that capacity as part of the strengthening the maritime industrial base?
Chairman, there's no question the maintenance of our ships and keeping our ships at sea is a critical element of naval power and something we watch very closely. We like to keep all the dry docks full, and even then, there's not enough to go around for our maintenance needs. So absolutely vital having a vibrant commercial shipbuilding and ship repair industry will support the Navy in our needs and vice versa. And so it's something we work closely with Merit on, and there's cases where when a dry dock is empty, we're coordinating between the agencies with the Hill. Often you may hear about it first, and we will swarm to do what we can there.
Thank you, and in the interest of time, I now recognize my friend and ranking member, Joe Courtney.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. So, Mr. Potter, we had a good conversation actually over the many months about revitalizing the shipbuilding industrial base. Your colleague, Michael Duffy, the Undersecretary for Acquisition and Sustainment, was before the full committee, HASC committee, a few weeks ago. And, the one message that he conveyed was that if we really want to stimulate, investment, hiring, and, strong production cadence, multi-year procurement is really the key sort of incentive. for, again, stimulating the industry. And would you agree with that assessment?
Yes. Yes, Congressman.
So in 2023, we passed the NDAA, the FY24 NDAA, which provided a multi-year procurement for the Virginia-class program, which you referred to in your opening remarks, again, which will authorize up to 13 Virginia-class submarines, which, again, subject to negotiation. Again, we're now, well into the third year since the authorities were granted. We're still waiting to get that, and again, being pretty close to that industrial base. There's no question that in terms of supply chain companies, that really is kind of the Da Vinci Code in terms of, how you really stimulate people to sort of jump into the game when they see a long horizon of a multi-year contract. Can you tell us where that process stands?
Yeah, Congressman, Jan, the multi-year contracts, for sure, they're typically for shipbuilding 5-year contracts, 10 ships if it's 2 per year, sometimes more, sometimes less. And that provides a binding commitment from the government to a contractor on that we will commit to those ships, and if we don't, there's termination liability penalties. And so it's a extraordinary multi-year commitment that, subject to appropriations, we're able to enter into. That does allow these companies to then enter into subcontracts for multiple ship sets of components, 10, engines and so forth. And there's economies of scale that come. The government typically gets at 8 to 10% savings over annual procurements, as you know. So in this case, the next Virginia-class contract, Block 6, has been coupled with the next Columbia-class contract, Build 2, as you're well aware. And total, that's 15 submarines. And so there's been a little bit of a longer-term negotiation as the complexity of that negotiation has increased. But there's no question it's important. There's no question it's a priority for this administration to get that contract awarded soon. And I think it's in the final stages of that happening.
Well, again, we're actually, rooting you on, and we want to see it get across the finish line. And again, Duffy is right. I mean, that's really going to, be a huge game changer. Mr. Carmel, back in about 2017, we passed the Vessel Contract Manager Authority for the multi-mission training vessel, which again has been a smashing success at the Philly shipyard. I think they're on the 5th, if not the 6th vessel for the Can you give us, again, a quick description of why the Vessel Contract Manager is the right model? And when we're talking about stimulating growth through the SHIPS Act, that really should be, at least the foundation of how contracts